Hello everyone, and welcome to the final session of Supporting Siblings. I'm Bree, for anyone that might not have attended any of the previous sessions. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which we're all joining from today, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. I'm joining today from the lands of the Murrumbidgee people on Yuin Nation, and I do encourage you to share in the chat which lands you're joining from. So over this series, we have explored understanding the sibling experience, building relationships and resilience, navigating sibling roles, and the future. Last week, we talked about support in school and community sessions. Today, we're addressing one of the most challenging aspects, I personally think, of the sibling experience, what it means to grow up in families where medical complexity, uncertainty, and sometimes life-limiting conditions are part of daily life. So I guess in families where a child has high medical needs or faces a life-limiting condition, siblings can often carry unspoken worries, very big emotions, and experiences that can be incredibly difficult to put into words. They may witness medical crises. They might experience long separations during hospital stays and live with a level of uncertainty that most children never face. These experiences can leave the sibling feeling scared, confused, and sometimes forgotten in the midst of the medical emergency. So today's session is supporting those siblings in those medically complex families. And I have no doubt it's going to be a heartfelt conversation about how to support siblings living in the shadow of medical uncertainty. I think this is going to be one of our most tender sessions. I think it's going to require both courage and compassion to navigate these topics together. So I'm really pleased to have Shannon back from Siblings Australia with her professional expertise from leading Siblings Australia, along with her personal insights as a stepmother. And we're also joined by actually my friend and colleague, Pam. So Pam's a mum to four, and her eldest son was born with congenital cytomegalovirus. She has a profound understanding of the complexities that come with disability and diagnosis. And Pam is very passionate about ensuring siblings are supported within families of children with disability. And she courageously shares her family's story as a way to heal, connect, and empower others walking this similar path. So together, Shannon and Pam are going to guide us through, some of that difficult terrain that families face. The emotional impact of hospital stays, long absences, gently navigating grief, anticipatory loss, a bit of trauma, but also about creating moments and simple routines that help siblings feel seen and supported. Today's topic may bring up some strong emotions or difficult memories for some of you. If you find yourself feeling overwhelmed during this or after the session, please reach out to your support network, whether that's your family, your friends, your GP, or other health professionals. Taking care of yourself is essential to being able to care for your children. So I'm going to throw it straight over to you, Shannon, because I'm looking forward to this topic myself after my son just had a hospitalisation last week and I had to shuffle my daughter everywhere.
Thanks, Bree. Nina Marnie, I'm joining you from the Ghana lands on the Adelaide Plains. We are having very wild weather here, so if there's any background noise here, everything's just a bit chaotic in Adelaide at the moment. Thank you so much for having us here, Bree, and thank you, Pam, for joining us for this final session. I think tender is a very good way to describe the topics we're going to be discussing today. And just reiterating what Bree said there for everyone in attendance, please make sure that you are looking after yourselves in the way that you need to, because this is a very tough conversation, and I am incredibly grateful, Pam, for your willingness and your generosity in sharing your family's experience to help guide other people. To start us off, I was wondering if you could introduce your family. You've got Christopher and you've got three other children, and if you could just sort of tell us a little bit about each of those four kids in your life.
Yeah, amazing. So, like Shannon and Bree have said, my eldest son, Christopher, he's 11, and he was born with congenital CMV or cytomegalovirus and has a whole bunch of other secondary diagnoses as a result of that. So he's the big brother, And then I have two girls, Charlotte, who's 8, and Matilda, who is 6. They are the best of friends, but could not be more opposite in their personalities. Charlie is warm and nurturing and a rule follower and a people pleaser and a real little mother duck and has the biggest heart in the world. Whereas Matilda dances to the beat of her own drum and plays by her rules and her rules only. She's very high spirited and just kind of does her own thing, but she is also incredibly kind and just the most beautiful, sensitive soul as well. And like I said, they're the best of friends. And then to round out our family, we also have a 3-year-old boy, Max, who is just an absolute card. He is his father reincarnated. They are the same person. They have the same interests and the same ridiculous sense of humor. There is never a dull moment in our house. There is always something fun, loud, and chaotic happening between the 4 of them, and my husband and I. So, yeah, we live large and loud.
Beautiful. Every time you talk about Matilda, I think of my Sid, who's 11, and they sound like they might be soulmates. Couldn't you tell us a bit about Christopher's condition, and what that means for your family day to day?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, he was born with congenital CMV or cytomegalovirus. Secondary to that, he has a whole bunch of other diagnoses. The most probably pronounced and one that impacts him the most is probably his severe cerebral palsy and his epilepsy. So he's having seizures daily, and his cerebral palsy has affected all 4 of his limbs, his torso, and he has very limited head control as well. So that's got all kinds of ramifications for his body. So he's often in pain. As a result, he's got issues with his hips and his spine. So positioning can be really difficult. He's unable to swallow properly, so he's completely and entirely tube fed. He's nonverbal. He's a wheelchair user and completely non-mobile. So he relies on us for absolutely everything. But what he gets from us, he repays in smile and big love tenfold.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Each sibling often has sort of a unique relationship with their brother or sister who has high medical needs. And we spoke about this last week, and it was just it's gorgeous to hear how the other 3 relate to Christopher and how they sort of interact with him. Can you talk us through what each of those different relationships look like in your family?
Yeah, so we've been really mindful in making sure that the other 3 kids all have their own unique relationship with Christopher, and it started from the moment that they were brought home from the hospital. They're always involved in all of the care that we provide for him. We don't shy away or rush them out of the room when we need to do cares or medication or anything like that. They're very involved in everything that we do. But like you said, they've all got a really unique relationship with them. I think Christopher's picked up, he's very intuitive. He's very in tune with people and the kind of vibe that they give off. So he's understood for a very long time that if he wants mischief, chaos, and fun, he needs to connect with Till. If he wants a nice nurturing cuddle and just some calm, quiet time, he needs Charlie in his corner. So he's already worked that out. Charlie, like I said, she's very nurturing. She's all over it. She's often the one that will grab a towel and wipe his mouth if he's got some dribble coming out, or like I've got video footage of her teaching Max when he was 2 how to sing and comfort to Christopher when he's having a seizure. So she's like taken on that role of that nurturer and teaching the others how to care for him. She's also really great at, if something is quite dramatic is happening with Christopher, she will entertain the others. Like she'll actually pull them away and like keep them distracted so that they're not too affected by something that's going on, or they don't get too upset. Like I said, Max is a massive sport fan, and we've always encouraged the kids to be super involved and include Christopher in everything they're doing. So he's never far from a ball. And so he and Christopher actually play ball quite a lot. Christopher has some voluntary movement through his right arm. So if you put a ball on his lap, he will knock it off. Max knows that. So they play ball. Max comes and puts the ball on his lap. He waits for Christopher to knock it off, and then he goes and gets it. And he's he likes to run his own commentary. So he assigns Christopher a football team, he assigns himself a football team, and then he's commentating the entire match the whole time that all of this is going on. He doesn't just go and pick up the ball, he tackles it to the ground and gets a try and calls a penalty and does all of these things the whole time. Christopher loves it. But yeah, it's very heartwarming watching the individual relationships that they each have with him, because they all connect with him in very different ways, but it's so tender and deep, the relationship that each of them have with him.
Yeah, there was a very northern southern states thing there when you said football, because I was picturing AFL, and then you talked about the other one.
So, fun fact, Max refers to AFL as the bad footy.
Oh, okay.
Well, he
Max,
prefers the NRL. So we watch the good footy and the bad footy. That's just what they're called.
okay, yep. Max and I've got beef.
You're not the only one.
Have you noticed, as the kids have gotten older, as Charlie, Tilly, and Max have gotten older, that their emotions have changed around what Christopher is going through and how that's impacting on them or the family or on him himself?
Yeah, so we've always tried to be fairly open with the kids. We're obviously not too brutal with them, and we try and keep it as age appropriate as possible, but we're always, very honest with them. We've just recently had a hospital admission that was pretty tough on all of us. It was quite a long one. He took a long time to turn a corner, which is unusual for him. Normally he's pretty quick once he's got antibiotics on board. And Charlie particularly found it really difficult. It was day 5, I think. So we were in there for 6 nights, and it might have been day 4. And she, on the way home, said to my husband, who was home with the kids, I was in the hospital with Christopher this time, and he was putting her to bed, and she said, Dad, I need you to be really honest with me and tell me the truth, because you keep telling me he's okay, but he's still in the hospital. So I kind of had to reevaluate how we're talking to her, because we're pretty we kind of simplify things a little bit, because they're still quite little. Like, we don't want to steal their childhoods. We don't want them to have to grow up quicker than they need, because they already have had to. And so we're always like, he's getting the care and support that he needs, and he's only in the hospital because he needs oxygen and medication that Mummy and Daddy can't give him at home. And that's often enough, because they are very little. And Tilly and Max, their personalities, that's okay. Like, they trust us implicitly. They're still that young that what Mum and Dad says goes. There's no reason to distrust us. So, okay, Mum and Dad said he's okay, then he's going to be okay. Charlie's a little bit more wise up to it now. She's starting to turn that corner of maturity. She's very aware and in tune to where Tom and I are at, and she could tell that we were struggling because he wasn't getting any better. And so she needed us to be really honest with him and with her, sorry. And so we sat down and we had a conversation with her, and we explained a little bit more about what was going on, that he just needed a little bit more time to get better, and that we would always be really honest with her, and we would always tell her the truth. And so that's kind of how we're getting her through this latest admission. It's been really hard for her, and she's developed she's leveled up her closeness with Christopher just in the last kind of 6 months. I think she's starting to have a much more deeper understanding of what a hospital admission means for him and what it means for our family. So she's like really, really leveled up her closeness with him. So it was really difficult for her to see him so unwell. But she insisted on, she wanted to see him, because we gave her the choice. We understand that it's difficult to see him in the hospital. And if you don't want to go and see him, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you love him less, but you're allowed to have a day off from seeing him like that. And she was like, no, I need to go and see my brother. And she would arrive at the hospital and get straight into bed with him. And she would lie there with him until it was time for her to leave and come home. So yeah, I think as she gets older that, because she's not quite old enough for us to be really brutally honest with her about his prognosis just yet, but at the same time that, he's just getting a little bit of extra care and support that he needs that we can't give him at home isn't quite enough. So we're actually finding this kind of age bracket for Charlie quite challenging because it's really hard to know exactly how much information to give her without overwhelming her, but also making sure that she's got enough that she's not going to worry more.
Yeah, and it's that challenge, isn't it, about being open and honest, but not building on anxiety, but
Yeah.
giving them assurances that aren't based in false hope that you can't sort of fulfill. It is a real balancing act. We often talk
Yeah.
to families about sort of answering questions until the questions end. And so, giving a bit of information and then waiting to see if the sibling child has further questions. And
Yeah.
yeah, creating that space where they can say, I'm not buying what you're telling me. I need a bit more here.
And it's so easy to be quite dismissive too.
Yeah.
But I think it's also really easy to forget because you're so wrapped up in the fact that one of your children is in the hospital and is really, really unwell. It can be really easy to lose sight of the fact that their sibling is in the hospital and they don't have the depth of understanding that you do of where they're at and what's going on, and that it just takes time for the medications to work and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really fine balance to get right between like making sure you're giving them the right amount of information and answering any questions that they do have without being dismissive or overloading them with information that might worry them more.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and the reality, Pam, is your family will one day lose Christopher.
Mm.
And that's something that no parent wants to imagine. But you've spoken to me about some of the ways that your family's been really proactive in planning the supports for your sibling children when that does come to pass, in terms of other adult people you've had involved with Charlie, Tilly, and Max. Can you talk me through sort of yours and Tom's decision making and your thought process behind that, and how
Yeah.
you sort of picture that playing out in the future?
Yeah. So Christopher just keeps kind of bucking the trend. So prognosis wise, he wasn't supposed to survive a few minutes past birth if he made it through birth. He's now 11. So it can be really hard to kind of plan and work out and navigate life with that kind of hanging over your head. But something that we were very intentional in doing and very mindful about, as part of the decision of growing our family, was ensuring that our other kids have other trusted adults that they can turn to when things turn to poo or when things are really exciting. So all of our kids are baptized and have godparents that we have chosen quite intentionally and had beautiful conversations with while we were still pregnant with each of the kids to ensure that they were on board and that they understood, like, it wasn't just a flippant decision of like asking our best mate to be the godparent of our kid, like that what we're asking them to do goes over and above what the usual role of a godparent is. So it's really important to us that they have those people involved in their lives on a day-to-day basis, and that they have developed relationships with those special people from birth, so that and they share milestone things within their life with those people from day one as life goes on. Because, like you say, there is going to come a time in our children's lives where they're going to lose their brother. And as much as I would like to say I'm prepared for that, I have no idea how I'm going to react when that happens. And as much as I would adore to be the person that supports my other kids through the loss of their brother, I'm going to be grieving my son. And I can't confidently say that I'm going to be in the right frame of mind and emotionally available for my kids. But they have developed really strong relationships with trusted adults that they can turn to, and those people are going to support them through that. So our hope is that when Christopher does go, Tom and I will have a little grace period where we're able to safely grieve Christopher, knowing that our other kids are going to be wrapped up in love and supported through the grief of their brother when we're not able to be there for them the way we would like to be. So we have strong family relationships. Like Tom's parents are heavily involved, and they're a massive support to our family. But by establishing these relationships with other family members or friends who still care deeply for Christopher, but are once removed from like a nanny relationship or a mum and dad relationship, then our other kids are going to be their sole priority during that time, so that they've each got their own special support person to wrap them in love and help them with whatever it is that they need help with during that period. Yeah.
And you mentioned, as you were sort of leading into that answer, that it's not just for when things do go to poo. It's, you know, I imagine you and Tom have long periods sort of where there are those celebratory moments in your other children's lives that perhaps you can't be there for because you are in hospital with Christopher, but they've got those other adults there that they can celebrate life's wins with.
So birthdays are never a small occasion in our household. We have a loud, raucous family, and all of our kids come with attachments. So there's always lots of people around to celebrate birthdays. Their special people are the first people they call if they get an award at school or they win a race at the athletics carnival, or they're front row, front and center for all of their dance concerts. And like, you know, Max has to call his godfather every time their football teams play against one another. And like, we have to, you know, they're constantly talking and in contact with them. And like you say, it's not just in crisis. They're like, they speak to their godparents at least twice a week. And sometimes, like, Charlie's getting to an age where she doesn't necessarily want to talk to mum about the drama between the girls at school, but she'll come home and she'll talk to her godmum. So she'll come home. She's like, I need a cupboard call, mum. Sure, babe. So she takes my phone into her wardrobe. Could not think of a worse place to have a phone conversation, but she has to sit in her cupboard and she calls her godmother and she tells her and downloads all about the gossip from school that week. Yeah, so it's really important that they know that they're available to them at all times and that they're there to celebrate the highs, but also support them through the lows too.
Yeah, and I think one of the really important things that you've got with those other adult people in your kids' lives is when you talk about them, you talk about them talking about, you know, Charlie and Tilly and Max's whole life. It's not how do you feel about Christopher, it's what's happening with the girls at school or when are our football teams playing. And I think a lot of adult people who are sort of in that sort of support role for families like yours, like but in a different way, can sort of default to, well, how are you feeling about Christopher, rather than sort of taking that, no, I'm going to focus on you as a person. And I think that's just, I love that for your kids that you've got that network around them. It's beautiful. The other thing that you talked to me about the other week was the fact that because of sort of where your kids go to school and the age dynamic of your children, your kids have always been surrounded by other sibling children. They know people who've got Christophers in their families as well, so they don't sort of feel like we're the only ones who are going through this. How important have those peer networks been for the other three?
Yeah, I think it was actually quite difficult for Charlie. I don't think she realized until she was about year 1 that not everyone has a Christopher. Christopher being the eldest, like a lot of the mothers groups and like school groups, school mums that I, you know, became friends with were through Christopher. So by default, all of their families had a Christopher. And I think it was, Charlie would have been in year 1 before she realized. And she actually came home and said to me, Mum, my friends aren't lucky like I am. Because they're not lucky enough to have a Christopher. Which she kills me. Every time, this kid with her big heart, she kills me. But I think it makes a huge difference for the girls, particularly knowing that they are not alone, and that there's an element of like choosing to have kids after Christopher and growing our family. our kids were always going to be different because of who their brother is. But I think by having friendships of families that have other kids like Christopher on various levels for whatever reason helps them to see that they're not alone and that they don't have to do it all. Like there are other people in this world that feel the same as them. And that sometimes life isn't fair, and that's actually no reflection on how you feel about your sibling, but you are still allowed to feel like it's all a bit shit. And so having those friendships around them is really important to help validate that and to help buoy their self-worth.
The other thing, and we talked about this last week in our session with Belongside. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. I don't know why that was so hard to get out. But we were talking about the school experience and how important it is to find the right school community when you've got a child who's got additional needs. The family we had, the mum I spoke to last week, had a son who has heart issues and has got disabilities that go alongside his heart condition. And she spoke about finding the right school for her two older daughters. How have you gone about finding a school community that works for Charlie and Matilda, and what are the sort of things in that school that have been really important for supporting them?
So we always wanted the girls' school community to have some kind of understanding of Christopher and the world that they live in and what they experience at home. The harsh reality is that there's a pretty high chance he might not see them finish primary school, which means that they're going to be really young, processing some really big grief. And their school community needs to support and value the depth and how profound that experience is going to be for them. And we always wanted a school that was open to that wasn't going to sweep it under the rug because it was a bit hard for the adults. We're really fortunate. Christopher goes to school to a specialist school here in Canberra. And right next door is a small Catholic school, which is where my girls go. So the schools actually have a really beautiful relationship. So students from years 5 and 6 from the Catholic primary school once a fortnight go up to the specialist school and take students for a walk around the block. Once a term, they have picnics together in the playground. And whenever there's any performances or anything happening at the Catholic school, they invite the students from the specialist school come down to watch the dress rehearsal. So they get to be included with all that kind of stuff. I think it's incredibly important for the girls' school community to have an understanding of that, so that if they are having a bit of a crappy day and they're just a bit overwhelmed, it's not brushed aside and it's not dismissed, it's acknowledged. And it's not just the staff, but the students as well. So there's a number of families at both schools, which is really lovely, which has been great for the girls. But also Christopher's school finishes 15 minutes before the girls' school. So it's not uncommon for me to park at his school and he and I will walk down to pick up the girls. So their classmates are seeing him. They know who he is. They are asking questions. They chat with him. So I think it's really lovely for them to have that relationship with their peers, and for their peers to have that level of understanding of where Christopher's at, so that they can say, "Oh, I'm a bit worried about my brother because he's in the hospital this week," when he does go, it will be a bit easier for their school to support them through that, because they've got that knowledge and understanding of it.
Yeah. And for parents who aren't lucky enough to live somewhere where they have got that sort of co-location that is working so beautifully for your family, what are the sorts of things that you would want their schools to know about supporting a family like yours?
I think it's really important to have open and honest communication. So we go and see the girls' teachers at the start of every year and then check in various points throughout the year just on how they're going. We make it very clear this is won't be the same for every family, because not every family prioritizes this the way we do. I don't care about academics. Could not care less if you are a D student. If that's your best, go hard, babe. Don't care. I need you to be a good person, and I need you to be supported socially and emotionally. And I just want you to be kind. Like, that's all I need. And so I check in with the teachers to find out how they're going socially and emotionally. If they're withdrawing, if they're struggling at all with any of the things, they're the places that I want them to be supported, because that's the hard stuff. And that's generally the first sign that they're struggling a bit with something, and it often coincides with hospital admissions and things like that. So Charlie's struggling a little bit on the back of our last hospital admission, and we actually met with her teachers last night, and it is starting to show at school as well. So chatting with her teachers and just being really open about where Christopher's at and the different things that we're telling Charlie to help support her through that, so they can be telling her the same thing. Because it's difficult for teachers if they don't have that communication, right? Because they obviously know that she's got a brother who's often sick and he's got all of these disabilities, and they're like, we don't want to tell her that everything's going to be okay if it's not, because that's horrible. So having that open, honest communication with the educators is really important. The girls have actually done this off their own bat, but I actually think it's so amazing. When they're doing news and show and tell and things like that, whenever they get the opportunity, they take photos of Christopher in, and they proudly tell their classmates all about him. They've both done that off their own bat. They've both come to me and said, Mum, it's free news next week. Can I take a photo of Christopher, and can you help me write some things down about him? So by sharing with their classmates, it's also a really beautiful insight into their personal relationship with their brother for their teachers as well. So their teachers can kind of get on the same page to help support them as much as they can.
We have very similar attitudes to school
Yeah.
success. I always go through and I check what's your attitude like, how have you been relating to your classmates and stuff. And sometimes my kids will say to me, but you didn't look at my grades. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, grades, yeah, fine. But I love the bits about what sort of person you are, because that's what's going to sort of drive you through life. We're getting very close to time, and as Brea said, I've not managed to keep any of these on track, but I've got one more question for you before we finish. For any parents who are in a similar situation, who are online with us at the moment or who are listening to this afterwards, do you have a piece of advice or reassurance you'd like to give to them about supporting their sibling children?
I think that being honest as much as possible is super important. Obviously, age appropriateness is super important as well. But yeah, just being open and honest with them. Include them, engage them in what's going on with their sibling. Don't brush them off and don't push them out because you're worried about them being traumatized or upset. It's actually more worrying for them if they don't know what's going on. Include them. And I think that, like we were talking about with the positive and negative, like get people to engage with your kids about highs as well as lows. Like, all of my kids are included in all of Christopher's cares and have been from day one. So like Maxie loves to help with medication at night when we're putting him to bed. So it's obviously heavily supervised, but he likes to push the medication through the syringe. He thinks he's being really helpful by doing that. And all of the kids have been involved in some way along those lines. And I think that goes a long way to building and encouraging a relationship between them. And we never discourage questions. We always are very happy to answer any questions that they might have. But I think one of the most important things that we do is make sure that we have one-on-one time with each of them. And like I said, our life is pretty loud and chaotic, and it's not always me that gets that one-on-one time with the kids. Sometimes it's dad, sometimes it's nanny, but they all get special one-on-one time at some point through the week with someone. And I think that is so important to ensuring like siblings argue and there's always going to be tension and there might always be a little bit of resentment on whatever level, but that's normal. Like we get that between Charlie and Tilly and Max, let alone Christopher and the others. Like the girls are actually, Tilly's actually going through a phase where it's not fair that Christopher doesn't have to walk anywhere. How come how come I don't get a pram or a wheelchair? Dude, because your legs work. So like that argy bargy, but he said, but it's all normal. And that little bit is okay, but encouraging that relationship and that bond between them and ensuring that they each get individual time goes a really, really long way to making sure that that little resentment doesn't get bigger and that they do adore one another.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing the story of your beautiful family. I am sure that everyone who has been listening today has been touched by your story and just by your spirit in the way that you're approaching all of this. The way that you're supporting Charlie and Tilly and Max is just beautiful. They're all very lucky to have you as a mum, all four of them. Thank you so much.
Me. Thank you.
It wouldn't be a session with Pam without laughter and a few tears. I probably should have told everyone a tissue warning at the beginning because she does this to me every time. Before we do wrap up, there is just a question in the chat, Shannon, just around resources. Are there any resources available on how to share, this very personal and important information with the siblings? Like, are there any kind of resources around having these kind of conversations?
Look, there are some, and I'll send them out free as part of that pack that we're sending out afterwards. We also have SIB support, which is our counselling service and can be family counselling. So if parents are feeling like they need some guidance through that as well, some one-on-one guidance, we can do that. But I'll send that through to you, Bri, and we can go from there.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, both of you. Pam, your willingness to share your family's journey and those insights that you've gained along the right way is just really a gift to other families. There's been so many messages in the chat just around how beautiful it is and, how much they appreciate you and your family. And Shannon, just over this series, thank you so much. Like the expertise you've brought into these sessions, just translating these complex emotional experiences into practical support strategies, and giving families the tools they need to move forward with greater confidence. And this is our last session, which I'm a bit disappointed about. I really enjoyed this, but I think I just want to acknowledge that extraordinary commitment that everyone is showing, like not just those that are attending the sessions, but the daily work that families are doing of supporting all your children through whatever circumstances your families face. We have covered a lot of ground in these 5 sessions.
Haven't we?
We have. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are collating all the questions together, which I'm going to email off to Shannon later, and she's going to get some answers to us. We do encourage you to connect with Siblings Australia. We will send the link to their website, or you can just go to siblingsaustralia.org.au. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Check them out. All of their programs are on there. They're SibWise, SibWorks, Sib Support, lots of Sib stuff.
Yep.
If you want to rewatch this recording, it'll come out in a few days. You also will have access to the previous recordings as well. The journey of supporting siblings is ongoing. There isn't a graduation. There's no point where you've actually learned everything you need to know because our children are changing all the time, just as we are. But what you now have are hopefully maybe some frameworks for thinking about these challenges, some strategies for approaching some difficult conversations. And I think most importantly, the knowledge that you're not alone in this work and that there is a wonderful organisation like Siblings Australia that can provide that support to help you navigate some of these tricky situations. I know that some of you are facing circumstances that test every limit of what families can endure. Others are navigating daily complexities that, while might be a little bit less dramatic, are no less demanding on your energy and your love. So wherever you are, remember that those small, consistent acts of recognition and support for your siblings can make the enormous difference in their lives. Thank you so much for joining us for Supporting Siblings. And thank you for being part of our community. We hope that these conversations continue in your own families, within your community and your support networks. Every story matters, every sibling matters, and every family's journey towards greater understanding and support makes a difference. Thank you, Shannon. It's been such a wonderful series. Thank you, Pam, for making me cry again. No, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. Yeah, this has just been such a wonderful series, and I know that everyone that's been watching the webinars has really appreciated it, and I look forward to working with Siblings Australia in the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bree.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.